Between sessions, I added some things to the index.php file that I think we need to highlight before we move on. I've linked two more style sheets, the system general.css style sheet and the system.css style sheet. Both are style sheets that Joomla needs in case yours doesn't cover some of the basics things. So it's important for you to have those in your index.php file as well. Also, I've styled the modules. Style equals rounded and style equals XHTML. Again, we're going to talk about those later, but for now I've put them in there, and I'll show you in just a moment the difference that they make. In the template file, I added margin 0 auto and padding 0 into the wrapper ID, and then I commented them out. In CSS files, a slash star and then a star slash allows you to comment out any of your code as well as add comments in various places. Let me stop for just a moment and talk about commenting because it's really important that you do this. Commenting will help you remember down the road what on earth you did here. So I always put in comments to help me remember what I've done and why I did it. Here, if I press save and go back out to my main page and hit refresh, you'll notice that a number of things have changed. In the body, I defined the color of the text as black, which is number 000. Font family is Arial. The font size is 80% of normal. Margin 0 auto and padding 0. And what this did is it changed everything to Arial. It removed the padding from around the top so it's nicely flush against the edge, and it's 80%. So this is around 10 and a half pixels in size. Again, if I want to play with this to see what differences might happen. So at 100% we see that this is pretty big. This is about a 14 pixel font. So 80% is nice. If I eliminate that, it goes back to the normal. So again, nice to see what some of these things will do. Back in my CSS file, if I take out this commenting here around the wrapper div, note what happens when we refresh. I've now centered my template on the page, and while it's still a fixed width, it automatically centers the content no matter how big my browser is, unless of course I move it down to be too small. This is helpful for certain templates that look really good if you are trying to create that center look with white space around it, or a background image like some of the ones we saw in the introduction to the course. And that's accomplished not in the body command, but in the wrapper div. The wrapper, as you recall, is the outside container for all of my content in my template. And by putting it as margin 0 auto, padding 0, it tells the browser to automatically center this with equal margins on the left and on the right and no padding. So that can be really helpful. But for now, let's leave that undone so our template is nicely back over. I also took out the blue border around all the images. If you might remember, all of these images that were links had little blue borders around it, which screams of, ooh, not a finished template. So again, the command to do that is very simple. img, which is for image, border colon, none, semicolon. And that takes the border off all of your images. If you do want a border on certain images later, you can create new classes with certain kinds of borders for each image as you wish. All right, let's talk about conditional statements. Now, it's great to have a template that basically does everything you need. But what happens if on a page you've eliminated the right-hand module position and you don't want that position to show up because, hey, there's nothing there? We can create a conditional statement that says don't show the right div if there are no modules in the right position. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to do that, we're going to have to use some PHP code. So again, $PHP begins our PHP command. Now notice all of the text here turns different colors because it's now been corrupted by this openPHP tag. We have to make sure that we close that later on. An if statement says if something is there or not, and again Coda is trying to help me out here, $this dash greater than count modules. What this command does is it says out of the array that is created when your page is put to the browser, I want you to count up the number of modules in the right position. In PHP, again, whatever is opened needs to be closed. So we can put those two brackets at the right, colon, and then close out our PHP. That says now if there's any modules in the right position, do whatever follows. In this case, div ID equals right, close out the div. Now I have to close this if statement as well. So again, I open up a new PHP statement and I say end if, semicolon. Because a semicolon again ends the line and terminates the PHP statement. Very, very important here. So now what this is going to do, if I click save and I go back over to my page and I hit refresh, well, everything's still there. Well, of course it is. That's because there are currently modules published to the right position. What happens if I go in and I unpublish all of the right module positions? Let's go ahead and do that. So the quickest way to do that is just go to the right, select all, and say disable. Come back over to the front page and notice now there are no module positions, but is the right column called? No, it's not. Now what this gives you the power to do is if there are no right modules, you can insert others. That's not really helpful. But let's say this. Let's say you had a poll, which would normally appear here. Let's turn this poll back on. And now we hit refresh and our right div is back. But let's say this poll had expired and there was no poll to show. You don't want just nothing showing. What you can do over here in your index.php is this. Instead of saying end if, you say else. Now what the else command is, if there's a right module position, show the right module. But if there's not, I want you to do something else. And here we can do anything we want. We can say, no poll is scheduled for today. Now, that's kind of weird, and this may not be the best example, but it at least gives users an idea that, this isn't just blank for a reason. And then again, we just end it off and say if. Now I'm over. Again, there's still something here, poll is published. Let's unpublish the poll again and hit refresh. I'm sorry, no poll is scheduled today. So that gives you some real power. PHP combined with Joomla and combined with your templates are really, really powerful. Combined with your conditional statements, really, really powerful. The else part of the code will never show unless there is nothing in the right module position, whatever position you create this for. That's conditionals. Now let's talk about exceptions for the home page. And this is something I do on almost every template I create. Because often I have things that I want to show on the front page that I don't necessarily want shown on every other page. But I don't want to create a template just because my front page is different. It's really easy to do. There are two steps to this part. There are two steps to this process. Up here where we have defined JExec and restricted access, we need to define a couple of other things. We need to find out what our home menu is. So here we go, $menu equals ampersand $mainframe $menu $menu equals ampersand $mainframe, Oh my star. Dollar menu equals ampersand dollar mainframe get menu. What this is saying is I want you to get the menu. I want you to get the menu item on at any given time, and I want you to assign it to the variable dollar. The next step to this is dollar if ampersand we have these. Okay. To make exceptions for the home page work, we have to add these two lines just after our defined or command. Dollar menu equals ampersand dollar mainframe get menu says go and grab the menu structure, Joomla. Dollar active equals ampersand dollar menu active. This says tell me what the active menu is. When we're on our home page, the menu is home. So now that we know what dollar active is, we come down and we say okay, now that we've defined our active menu, now that we've defined our active menu, we can place anything on the home page that won't show up on any other page. So just let's go ahead and put something else in our header. Now let's line this up nicely and indently like we've talked about. PHP statement if dollar active is the home menu, this is the home page. I know that's silly, but it could be any content you want. Close out the if statement, hit save, and now come over to our browser, hit refresh, and this is the home page, shows up on our page. But if we go to any other page on our site, that disappears. And so we now have the ability to just put stuff on the home page. What happens if I want a completely different look at my home page? Well, the great thing is you're limited to the body only of your template. Let's do the same thing up here. Copy, paste, and then link to a different style sheet. Instead of calling it template home.css, call it home page home.css. And get to close out your PHP statement. So now my home can have a completely different look than my main page, than any other page. Now my home page can have a completely different look than any other page. Right. Let me give you a classic example of this. This is the Doug and John Show, which is a website that I have created for a client. It's a fun site. These guys are crazy. And this is their home page. If I go ahead and click on any other page, we get a completely different template, look and feel. All of this is a site, and all of this is a template. Page has one completely different look, and the inner pages have a completely different look. This can be done with one template, multiple templates. And believe me, when it comes to updating your templates, having one to update is far superior than having 2, or 3, or 4. And that's homepage exceptions. Another possibility is to include a module. We don't want to just have text there. Let's include a module called home. So now, whatever module is in the home position will be on the home page. Let's go over and create one real quickly just to see what this looks like. I can click New. Let's give Firebug, Custom HTML, and down here I can say this home page. So now I'm not editing my template time I want to change this. I'm editing a custom module. So this is the home page module. I don't want to show the title, and the position is home. Now, the great thing with Joomla 1.5, I can just type new positions in here, not limited. Make sure it's on all menu assignments. Even though it's only on the home page, it's just a good thing to do. And I can now play with this, make it a heading 2. I can put a link in here. And save that. Now when I come over to my home page, this is the home page. And it's got a link to a cool page in it. Now the reason this popped down is because H2 itself always has padding. And so we would need to find the H2 without padding in this instance. And we can give it even a special, we could give it a special div. Dash home. And so now when I come back out to the front, I can look at this, inspect element. This is an H2 in the div class. Whoops, why didn't that save? This is a div class module dash home, and it's an H2. Some padding at the top. If I come back over to my CSS, I can add a statement in here. Dot module dash home H2 padding 0. And now when I refresh, padding top 0. Now when I hit refresh, oh come on. So I can come in here and type module, put in module home, H2, margin top -5. Oops, sorry. Margin top 0 pixels. That removes it from the top of the H2 and puts it at the very top. You'll notice it still has a bottom margin. So this is really, really cool. Now I don't have to touch my template when I want to change the information in here. I can change this at any point, and it only appears on my home page. I don't have to do any crazy programming. With this instance, yes, I could have just put this. Yes, I could have just put this on page like that. But think beyond that. But think beyond just, and you can do some really, really creative things here. And that's homepage exceptions. Let me show you one last thing under conditional statements. I've moved the conditional statement for the right module position above the div ID equals main. I've done this in order to expand the main area out to the right if there's nothing in the right column. To do that, I need to change one thing. I need to add a new main-wide div where the width is the combination of the main and the right, in this case 660 pixels with a margin of 10 pixels. Now this div doesn't get included unless there's nothing in the right menu, the right margin, the right module position, the right div. Let's try that again. This doesn't get added unless there's nothing in the right div. So I've moved this conditional statement up. If something is in the right div, show the main, show the right. Else, just show the main wide and then put in the message and component JDoc statements. So what that looks like is this. If I have something in the right position, let's go ahead. So it looks like this. Let's go ahead and re-enable the poll, go back over to our front page, and hit refresh, and you'll see what we've been seeing all night, all along. The main menu, the main container, and the right position. Let's go ahead and disable polls, hit refresh, and now you'll see our main wide div has been called instead of our main div. Our main wide div has been called instead of our main div, and it's a little bit short, so I can go ahead and just play with that a bit. Whoops. Interesting. I went a little too far, and so it dropped it down because the width of the container, called the wrapper, is 900 pixels wide. Not a big deal. I'm just playing with Firebug. So let's just keep it on the safe side. Let's keep it at 670 pixels. So I can go back over to my template CSS file and change that 660 to 670. And now I've got a pretty good looking wide template. One thing to consider here, IE7 and IE8 handle these things very differently. So you'll want to make sure while you're designing these templates that you check in both browsers.